right. 254-339-1122. That's the number. We'll take your calls. Also, a lot of you have also texted us quite a bit. Heard from Ben, our good friend that covers Louisiana Tech in Louisiana. Ben just contacted us in Ruston, Louisiana. We had him on a couple of times last year when we thought that Baylor was going to open up against Louisiana Tech. Of course, that game went straight to hell because of COVID. Also, a lot of you are on the chat room. From DJ, I hate that the punishment is affecting those who are now here, who will be here, and were not a part of the original controversy. Something needed to be done, yes, but for them to take 5 years, yeah, it took forever. It took forever.
And they actually explained that. They said that, hey, COVID-19 was a factor, and what was their other? Oh, the changing in all of their leadership structure and everything was another factor. And I buy that to an extent. COVID's been around less than 2 years. This thing's been going on for 6. So they had a 4-year buffer where at any time they could have wrapped this thing up, and they didn't. So I'm not buying the whole, well, the last 2 years went to hell, and that's why. No. You had time before that. But regardless.
Well, considering that the one penalty they do get regarding an actual football player happened 10 years ago.
I mean,
that thing probably popped up pretty early on.
So, I mean, if only they would have had, a couple more years without COVID to add on to the 8 years they had on that particular. I mean, like when you start breaking it down like that, it's pretty silly. But yeah, I mean, it's a big day for a lot of different people, good, bad, and otherwise. And I'm interested to hear what people think.
There were a lot of people, a lot of columnists who wrote a lot of things, and a lot of people that wrote and spent time here and covered the story or whatever. And you could almost sense in some cases how some of them are disappointed today. That's fine. From Wade, just from reading, the punishment is essentially the NCAA saying they shouldn't handle matters like this, should be the Department of Justice. Wasn't a competitive advantage per se, which the NCAA otherwise would regulate. Now, what does this mean for Art Briles, Baylor football coach who took them to the Big 12 championships in 13 and 14 and turned the program around, who has not been hired by anybody except Mount Vernon High School and a semi-pro team in Italy? What does this mean? His name has been toxic. Some of you hate him. Some of you think he's an awful human being, that he's evil. He should go to hell, as somebody in a radio show has said before.
It's a freaking radio bit, yeah.
At the same time, here is what the NCAA said today involving Art Briles, who did not get what could have been a damning 5-year show cause. One former staffer was given that, but here is the NCAA's comments about Art Briles.
I printed it out for you.
Okay. All right, here we go. And I'm not going to read every word. The analysis did not end here, however. The panel also considered whether the head coach's own conduct, not the conduct of his staff, demonstrated that he failed to meet his responsibilities. Panel gave careful scrutiny to the head coach's handling of specific instances of alleged sexual assault, interpersonal violence, threats of violence that are at the center of this case. In each instance, when the head coach received information from a staff member regarding potential criminal conduct by the football student athlete, he did not report the information. He did not personally look at any further into the matter. He generally relied on the information provided to him by his staff and likewise relied on them to handle the problems. His incurious attitude toward potential criminal conduct by his student athletes was deeply troubling to the panel. As one panel member observed at the hearing when questioning the head coach's lack of response, a lot of these things we've been talking about, they're not NCAA violations or university policy violations. They're felonies. We're talking about rapes and physical assaults. The head coach failed to meet even the most basic expectations, this is the NCAA, on how a person should react to the conduct at issue in this case. He completely failed to meet the standard. However, there is no linkage between his conduct and level 1 or level 2 NCAA violations. The Committee of Infractions never before concluded the head coach responsibility violation occurred when there was no underlying NCAA violations. The panel makes no determination as to whether an allegation or conclusion would be appropriate in the future case. Under these specific facts and circumstances, the panel does not conclude the head coach responsibility violation occurred.
Which is, okay, what we've been saying for years. Did Art Briles deserve to be fired? Yes, and you see why, because he did not react to these things. Now, when it comes to the NCAA, they're telling you that none of this stuff that he did not react to is under their umbrella. They can't do anything about it. They did not like the way he reacted to it. Clearly, the way he reacted to it was wrong, and nobody's saying that. Now, there comes the dichotomy in Art Briles. Did he deserve to be fired? Yes. Does he deserve another opportunity? That remains to be seen. Both things could be true, and this does open the door for a university to hire him without a show cause penalty. Will one of them do that? I don't know, because he's essentially been under a show cause anyway.
I'm not trying to steal people's jokes off of Twitter, but I had the same thought. I mean, the moment Hugh Freeze is out the door at Liberty, Art Briles is going to be their head coach and reunite with Ian McCaw. I wouldn't be surprised to see that. Now, as far as interest elsewhere from other people, I have no idea on that, and it really doesn't matter to me. I mean, that's all water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned. So whatever he ends up doing, that's his tale to tell. But I think what we said all along, and we have lots of new listeners, and so you wouldn't have heard this, especially when we were at a different place talking about this 5 years ago. But there was no doubt that you could not use the excuse if you were Art Briles of like, well, I just didn't know. Well, it's your job to know. Like his reasoning in the very beginning was, well, I didn't know about this. Well, yeah, because you basically delegated and handed off the knowing to people around you so that you didn't have to know. Therefore, you didn't have to act, and therefore you could claim ignorance on, or claim no knowledge whenever something popped up. That's a terrible strategy to use, and just the ethics of that are troubling. So I think from that point of view, he was very much guilty because he should have been in the know on everything going on in his program, especially matters that are involving potential law enforcement or school conduct violations. There was no excuse for that. And, it worked for a while. He kept himself sort of protected, but, it was not the way that things should have been done. There's no doubt about that. And I'm surprised that he didn't get the show cause. I thought that was very much in the possibility of things that could happen. But, I mean, you laid out why not. And it's very similar to the actual punishment, for the school or lack thereof. It's just, hey, these are the rules that we can play by or that we play by. And as much as you want us to bend the rules to appease the mob, these are the rules. So, whether you wanted Art Briles to go to hell or not, I mean, based on what the NCAA can or can't do, according to them, they couldn't do anything. And I know that upsets a lot of people, but I don't know what to tell you. It's just what the rules are.
If a program wants to hire him, now they don't have to deal with any kind of issue of proving to the NCAA of why. They will, if they want to, they'll still, I'm sure, face the social justice or the social media warriors and others, and that's fine. Some have backed down from that. Hell, an NFL team and a CFL team backed away from that. But a high school team in Mount Vernon had enough balls to be able to hire Art Briles and deal with it.
No, I mean, come on now. Balls to hire Art Briles? It didn't take balls. I mean, it did in the standpoint of, like, people actually paid attention to Mount Vernon for 5 minutes. I mean, no one knew where Mount Vernon, Texas was prior to that. And, yeah, it took, I guess, balls to, hire a guy that...
It took what I mean by that is that to hire him and keep from, like, saying a week later, oh, my God, we made a mistake, we can't do this.
Yeah, but, okay, you're absolutely right. I just have a minor issue with the way you say it because it almost sounds like a compliment, and it's not at all a compliment that they had the balls to defend this guy when clearly there was a lot of toxicity surrounding him and act like nothing had happened. So, yeah, they did. But, fortunately for him, there were people that were willing to stand up for him and not back down, and that gave him some opportunities. But, you can also understand why a lot of people didn't want to give him an opportunity. And he absolutely, in many cases, didn't deserve an opportunity. But yeah. Sorry, right. I just the way you said that.
I think what the superintendent did took a lot of what I said. And then on top of that, he did face the backlash once the word got out, which I remember back on 4th of July a couple of years ago or 2 or 3 years ago. And unlike a CFL team or an NFL team or some college teams, he stuck to his guns. That doesn't mean he made the right hire. That doesn't mean others are wrong for not going after or not hiring him. But that's my opinion. You have yours. 254-339-1122. Back with your calls, text, and chat. This is Sikkim 365 Radio.